the narrator says, the telephone rang in her womb. That just get a whole page worth of I know exactly what is meant here, but I couldn't write that in epic fantasy, no matter how hard I tried to contrive it.
There's a literary quality to epic fantasy, at least from my experience with epic fantasy, that isn't so, it's much more pulp with the urban fantasy, I find, which isn't discounting it. It's not saying one is better than the other, it's just a different style of writing. Because sometimes I'll write stuff and I'm like, oh, this doesn't quite work in the urban fantasy world. It's a little too pretty almost, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think, and again, I feel the need to qualify here. We are talking, we're painting with a really broad brush, and anything you say, we're saying about epic, you can find the exceptions for, especially right now, because epic fantasy is very old as a genre compared to urban fantasy, which you probably can't consider older than 20 years.
Yeah,
But epic can probably go back maybe 40. And so now there's a big reaction to this classic, standard, kind of formal epic fantasy, and there's the people that love that, and then there's the people who are a little bit tired of that, and they're like, why don't we have epic fantasy, but it's character-centered, and we can have women, and some sex, and then some more sex. And so there's starting to be the deviant epic fantasy, which is really pissing some people off now. I haven't been reading these blogs, but a lot of people keep emailing me and saying, have you heard what so-and-so said on their blog about how the new generation of epic fantasy people are ruining epic fantasy?
Aww.
And I'm like, I didn't know that a genre was like a water reservoir. I didn't, that's like people that say, oh, you've ruined poetry. I would be so proud if I'd ruined poetry. You write a poem so powerful, it's like, boom, and it just reverberates through all time and space. It just destroys every piece of poetry ever. It runs it through some weird sympathetic process. No, it's like what I've done is I've written a poem that you can like. There's actually a big difference between those two things. And I think that's what's happening now is epic fantasy, you're getting these stories that diverge from this cliche, from this trope that has slowly become a cliche. And so people, when you meddle with something they love, they get a little frisky about it.
Well, I liked what you were saying, we were talking about this in the car, that he's dealing with a young male protagonist. Okay, how many of you were young and male and you weren't attracted to women and you didn't want to have sex with them? Do you know what I mean? So you're reading these epic fantasies, well, they're not having sex, but that's so alien to how teenage or 20-something men are. They want us, every woman they see, right? Well, most, maybe, I don't know. I'm not a teenage boy. I feel like one sometimes. But it seems sort of false to not have that be an aspect of your character's journey, that they would see women and be attracted to them.
And I could understand it in terms of the focus of the story, in the same way that you don't see much of the functioning economy of the world in The Lord of the Rings, because the major imports and exports of Mordor really aren't relevant to the story.
There are people that will argue with you on that.
And similarly, you could argue that in terms, what's really important to the story is sort of these big heroic high notes, the battles and the good versus evil and the struggle of the desire for power over wisdom, which is divesting yourself of power, all of these kind of grand themes. And so, nobody